This is Omar Nashashibi in Washington, D.C., here to shed some light into what the Biden administration is thinking related to global domestic supply chains. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative is seeking input from stakeholders by April 22nd on how the agency can, quote, promote supply chain resilience. In addition to the written comments that are due on April 22nd, the members of the public can also appear in person to testify before the U.S. Trade Representative at the U.S. International Trade Commission building in Washington, D.C. on May 2nd. For those interested in speaking on the state of supply lines, a filing of notice of intent to testify at the hearing is due by April 12th. And you should reach out to CLA if you would like to file a statement to appear in person or to testify, or just to file a statement in general related to the comment period. In conversations with the Biden administrations in recent weeks and others in Washington, D.C., the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative views its public comment period as an open canvas to receive stakeholder input. Their goal is to receive feedback not only on areas over which the USTR has jurisdiction, but also new tools Congress could bestow upon the executive branch. They are interested in receiving information on sector-specific policy tools, how to strengthen manufacturing in the U.S., and this is an open invitation to assist the Biden administration in developing trade and investment policy to support investment in manufacturing. A focus on preventing the, quote, same offshoring that we have experienced over the past few decades, unquote, and how to more strengthen mutual labor and environmental protections with allies. USTR identifies several sectors of a particular focus for the comment period, including aerospace and their components, automotive and parts, critical minerals, metals, semiconductors, renewables, textiles and pharmaceuticals, and medical goods, among a few others. The comment notice invites input from other sectors as well that, quote, may need dedicated trade and investment policy approaches. The notice includes a list of 12 questions on which USTR is soliciting input, and one stood out in the way policymakers drafted the inquiry over at USTR. Question 8 states that, quote, there is concern that preferential rules of origin in free trade agreements can operate as a backdoor benefiting goods and or firms from countries that are not parties to the agreements and are not bound by labor and environmental commitments. The question is, what actions could be taken to mitigate these risks and maximize production in the parties? So in Washington, we often have to read between the lines, and in trade speak, these are certainly code words that we discuss. And there is a clear reference to manufacturing in China and Mexico. Right now, the clear reference is Mexico and transshipment of goods from China into the U.S. using the new NAFTA free trade agreement known as the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. The U.S. is increasingly concerned over the surge in imports from Mexico and a range of goods that clearly originate in whole or in part through Mexico from China. Sources here in Washington indicate that the Biden administration is considering additional steps to prevent transshipment of products to avoid the 25% tariffs on direct imports from China, and that's typically what we're seeing right now going through many countries and not just Mexico. A product manufactured in China can go through a Vietnam, a Thailand, or in this case, Mexico, and then have a new label affixed to it, even though it has not gone through a material transformation that would take a new designation of its now being manufactured in that country. And this is where the United States is trying to backtrace the transshipment coming in from China, and even lawmakers on Capitol Hill are pressing for legislation that would allow the Commerce Department to apply tariffs on goods shipped through third-party countries, such as in this case. This is likely one of the tools outside groups will include in their comments to USTR that the executive branch could use in order to support U.S. manufacturing. Sources indicate that following the hearing and filing of the post-hearing briefs that are due on May 16th, USTR may issue a report on its findings and trade policy recommendations intended to bolster U.S. manufacturing and domestic supply chains. While the timing is uncertain, we could see a report issued in September of this year and may lead to new action by the Commerce Department and USTR related to enforcing and existing trade laws and using enhanced and new tools to target imports. In a related action, on March 7th, Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo met with the Advisory Committee on Supply Chain Competitiveness. Reconstituted and recharted in November of 2023, Secretary Raimondo spoke with the Supply Chain Center, spoke to the creation and the partnering with the private sector to prevent challenges in the supply chain. The focus on downstream supply chains remains a priority for the White House and the National Economic Council, which is coordinating supply chain policy for the Biden administration. The Commerce Department's Supply Chain Advisory Committee, USTR's policy inquiry on trade policy, and the recent release of the President's 2024 trade policy agenda on March 21 really demonstrate the commitment that this administration, similar to the previous one, are really focused on downstream industries. And the question is, as this leads up with the inquiry and the hearing, these are all leading up to presenting a more comprehensive approach to trade policy than we have seen at this point from the Biden administration, which has largely continued that of their predecessor, particularly as it relates to trade policy and tariffs. We'll be watching the USTR hearing and comment period closely to identify which policies stakeholders recommend the Biden administration may work to implement. Trade is a top priority for the Biden administration, and we will report back on what response we hear from USTR following the hearing on May 2nd. Until then, as always, please feel free to reach out to CLA for more information on trade policy coming from Washington, D.C.